There is a sea that has no shore, a vastness beyond the edge of thought. It is not water as mortals know it, but a softness that carries the weight of ages, a hush deeper than silence. Upon this ocean rests the cosmic serpent, Ananta, whose coils encircle eternity. And on those coils lies Vishnu, the preserver, the sleeper of worlds, his breath as patient as wind through a forest that has never seen a footstep. Night here is not the opposite of day. It is the tender origin of things. From the folds of Vishnu's quiet, colors that do not yet exist hover at the boundary of becoming. From his stillness, stories gather like dew. Most nights they pass through him and return to the uncarved realm, but on a certain night, a night as old as the first remembrance, his dream opens its eye and looks back at him. At first, the dream is only a shimmer, a slow, pearly movement beneath the horizon of the sea. The serpent feels it too. Ananta shifts slightly, scales whispering against time. If a mortal ear were present, it might have heard a music so soft it would be mistaken for the feeling after a sigh. The ocean answers in rings of soundless light, ripples that cast no shadow. Something is arriving. In the dream, a lotus rises from the center of the sea. Its stem is endless, rooted in mystery, and its petals hold the aroma of beginnings. The bloom opens, and in its golden cradle there is a light that leans forward with the curiosity of a child. The light takes a shape, not yet a god, not yet a world, but the idea of both. Vishnu's awareness bends toward it the way a river bends around a stone, and for a moment that has already lasted forever, everything is perfect, suspended, unthreatened by the disturbance of a name. The name comes anyway, as names do, Brahma. The word floats over the ocean like a small, radiant boat. It lands in the lotus, and the light accepts the sound. In the distance, a breeze begins, that first breeze, the one that knows the taste of time because it's the one who taught time how to move. Stars inhale. Darkness listens more closely, and Vishnu continues to sleep with a kindness that is indistinguishable from attention. If you were drifting here now, you would feel the dream's texture against your skin, a coolness that keeps its promise. You would sense that the universe is not a machine but a cradle, and that the cradle is being rocked by someone who has never doubted you. Each breath of the sleeper expands the sea not by volume but by mercy, and everything that will ever exist understands itself as a guest in this patient room. Within the lotus, Brahma has a question. It has not yet found words, but its contour is visible in the way he tilts his head, in the way he looks upward without knowing what upward means. Questions were not invented. They were found, curled in the corner of silence like sleeping animals. Brahma reaches for one and it wakes, stretching, revealing more of itself than he expected. Where do I begin? The ocean answers with a hush. The serpent shifts again, ever so slightly. Somewhere inside, 1,000 billion particles shake hands with the idea of being. Vishnu dreams on, and everything that might be begins to turn from might to will. Brahma speaks at last, his voice a thread drawn gently through the fabric of that night. If I am to make, I must first remember. But what is memory, and where does it start? I look for my roots, and the stem is endless. His gaze follows the lotus down into the unseeable depth, and the looking becomes a kind of music, a sound like light trying to understand itself. From the ocean's edge that does not exist, something approaches. It is not a creature, not a god. It is a story that has chosen legs, a story that has chosen to walk toward the one who will tell it. It steps onto the petals of the lotus and becomes a woman woven of dusk. Her eyes are the color of long patience. Her hair is a slow river. She kneels and cups Brahma's face in her hands, although he has only had a face for a moment. "Shoo," she says, and the hush inside the hush harmonizes with itself. "Who are you?" Brahma asks, marveling at the way the question returns to him like a bird that cannot bear to be far from its home. "I am called many names," she says, "but tonight, for you I am memory." Brahma nods as if the world has explained itself, which in a way it has. "Will you show me where to begin?" Memory smiles with the tranquility of someone who has watched many beginnings ripen into middles and soften into endings. "I will. But beginning is not a single place. It is the moment you notice you are being carried. Look." She touches the air, and the space above the lotus trembles like a veil in a wind that isn't quite ready to be wind. Images arrive, so slowly that they do not startle the darkness. A seed learning the grammar of soil, a rain practicing the courage to fall, a mountain practicing the humility to stay. Then 1,000 more, and more, and the ocean bears their weight as if weight were another word for blessing. Brahma watches with the wonder of a first dream. "I see, and yet I do not see all." "Nor should you," memory says. "To see all is to forget the joy of discovery. You will make a world that must learn to look." The serpent's breath is a long, tender tide. Vishnu's chest rises and falls like a small country of warmth. The lotus gleams, and, somewhere just beyond the horizon of the scene, other presences stir at the edge of the dream, summoned not by command but by the gravity of gentleness. One of them is a voice that has not yet become a god, but the world will later call him Shiva. For now he is the suspicion of rhythm, the hint that stillness carries a dancer in its pocket. Memory points toward the sea. "Listen." Brahma listens, and what he hears is not sound but agreement. The ocean agrees to hold. The serpent agrees to be the path that requires no feet. The sleeper agrees to trust. In that accord, fear cannot find an anchor, and so it drifts away like a cloud that forgot how to cast a shadow. "Tell me of time," Brahma says. "Is time this rise and fall, this breath?" "Time is the patience of breath," memory replies. "You may carve days from it like stepping stones. You may name them, you may count them, but do not try to own them. Time is the garden that opens its gate when you are gentle. Walk slowly. Bow as you enter." Brahma bows. The motion creates a small, golden wind that brushes the edge of the lotus and wanders out over the sea. Where it passes, possibilities open their eyes. A bird that has never been born remembers a song. A forest that has never grown remembers a secret place where moss keeps the sound of footfalls like a tucked-away laugh. A star, far from here in a place that doesn't yet exist, decides to be brave. The wind returns, carrying an aftertaste of wild honey. "I wish to make," Brahma whispers, "but I am newly awakened. My hands do not yet know the craft." Memory answers with a softness that could teach even stone how to listen. Creation does not ask for hands. It asks for devotion. Every act of making is an act of devotion. The world will be your prayer. Each breath of the sleeper is your temple. Vishnu dreams. In his dream, a child walks along a shore of silver dusk and bends to pick up a shell that hums the shape of a lullaby. The child raises it to their ear and hears, not sound, but the feeling of being welcomed by a home they have not yet reached. The feeling becomes a path. The path becomes a river. The river begins to sing. Brahma looks into the river that is not yet water and sees his reflection. It is not the face he will later wear in stories. It is the open, luminous face of a question that loves its answers before it knows them. If I am to shape this world, I must also shape myself, he says in a tone that is half statement, half wonder. You were shaped by the longing to shape, Memory says, and her words land like petals. Let the longing be your teacher. It knows where to go. He turns his attention to the lotus itself, to the way its petals hold not only him but the feeling of being held. He notices how the edges of the petals are patient with their own brightness, how they do not hurry to shine. He decides, quietly, that the world will be like this, bright, but patient with its brightness. He writes this decision in the secret book that is not a book, and all the pages agree by becoming more space. A subtle stirring travels through the ocean. On Ananta's coils, a thought is born that is not quite a thought, more like the shadow a thought makes before it arrives. Vishnu's smile deepens by a degree so small that only eternity could measure it. He dreams of a sound that will later be called Om, and although the sound has not yet unfurled, it fills the ocean with a gentleness that holds everything in one breath. The first echo of that sound becomes the curve of a petal. The second becomes the path for a star. The third settles inside Brahma's chest and lights a lamp there that will never go out. Tell me, Brahma says, what of the dreamer? If I make in the dream of the sleeper, am I real? Memory's eyes reflect the lamp in his chest. Reality is not a wall. It is a welcome. If the dream welcomes you, you are real here. If you welcome your creations, they are real too. You and the dreamer are not separate. You are waves in the same ocean. He breathes and the lamp steadies. Then I shall make with gratitude. May everything I shape feel welcome. Across the sea, where distance is a manner of speaking rather than a measurement, a place gathers. A plain of soft, pale grasses that sway to a breeze they haven't met yet. The grasses invent a word for their movement, and that word is yes. A horizon forms that knows how to keep a secret. Above it, a sky opens that is the color of held breath. Brahma looks and knows he has created a place for gentle beginnings. Will there be sorrow? He asks, without fear, like a gardener asking if rain will fall. Yes, Memory says, her voice like a hand on a brow. Not as punishment, but as seasoning. Sorrow will teach mortals how deep joy can be. But there will also be mercy, and mercy will teach them how to carry their joys and sorrows together. Brahma nods. He knows that to say no to sorrow is to say no to the fullness of the banquet. He chooses the banquet, and in the act of choosing, he creates a table, a long, warm table made of wood that remembers the forest, where all future meals of love will be served. The table waits, and even its waiting is a kind of nourishment. Back at the center, Vishnu turns upon the coils a fraction of a fraction. The movement sends a wave through the sea that takes a very long time to arrive everywhere. When it reaches the lotus, the petals glow brighter, and Brahma feels the lamp in his chest answer with a steadying hum. He hears, at last, the first syllable of the sound that will be called Om. It is not a noise. It is a permission. Tells him that there is room, and he fills that room with care. Will others wake? Brahma asks. Will there be guardians? Teachers? Those who remind the world to breathe. Memory inclines her head. Yes, they are already present as hints the way a melody is present in a single note. Lakshmi is the warmth in your gratitude. Shiva is the rhythm in your stillness. Sarasvati is the clarity in your question. In time, they will step forward from the hints and become themselves in your telling. Brahma closes his eyes, not to escape what he sees, but to drink it more completely. With closed eyes, he perceives the architecture of kindness. He sees how generosity is shaped like a bridge, how attention is shaped like a cup. He understands that a world can be built from bridges and cups, crossings and containings, and vows to tend both. A faint glow approaches across the ocean, as if dawn were walking without feet. From within that glow comes a presence as serene as a thought that has nothing to prove. Lakshmi, the grace within abundance, emerges like a fragrance finding its flower. She does not startle the scene. She completes a sentence that began long ago. "Welcome," Brahma says, bowing again, a little deeper this time because he has learned more about gratitude in the last handful of breaths. Lakshmi's smile is the home of gentle victories. "I am already within what you have chosen," she says, and indeed, Brahma can feel the warmth in his choice, the way the new grasses glow as if remembering sunlight. "Make, and let your making be generosity." Every form is a gift wrapping emptiness with respect. Brahma understands, and in understanding, he creates a small, clear lake upon the plain. The lake is not an answer but a listening. When the wind arrives, it will see itself in the surface and recognize its own kindness. When a creature drinks, it will taste not only water but welcome. When night leans down, the stars will rest there without fear of drowning. The lake understands these promises and keeps them without effort. The ocean grows quieter still. If quietness could have a heartbeat, this would be it. Vishnu's breathing strokes the sea like a parent stroking a child's hair. The serpent closes his many eyes, one by one, and the closing is a blessing. For rest, for trust, for the courage to be unhurried. A distant rhythm deepens, and with it the sense that everything is already held. Brahma looks once more into the depth where the lotus stem vanishes. "I wish to see the root," he says, moved by a curiosity that is also a form of love. "I wish to know the source." "You can look," memory says gently, "but know this. Some roots are shy. They teach by remaining unseen. They are not secrecy. They are sacredness. If you cannot see them, bow to the place where they must be." Brahma nods, and in the nod he creates a gesture that many worlds will use without knowing its name. Reverence for the unseen. He bows to the root he cannot find, and the bow becomes a path for humility to walk upon. It walks gladly, because humility loves to be given somewhere to go. The lotus shimmers. The first birds arrive, thoughts with feathers. They circle above the lake and choose names for each other that sound like morning. The grasses invent the art of swaying in agreement. The sky practices turning with kindness. A cloud becomes a teacher by remembering how to let go. Everything that arrives is tender with firstness. Brahma sits quietly and lets his hands learn patience. He does not rush to populate the world with noise. He listens for the edge of his own eagerness and softens it with breath. In that softness he discovers a truth. Making is not an act performed against emptiness. It is an act performed with it. Emptiness is not the absence of things but the presence of space, and space is the first generosity. He thanks the space and it widens, happy to be recognized. Lakshmi sits beside him without disturbing a single petal. "What you honor will flourish," she says. "Honor slowness, and the world will ripen instead of spoil." He honors slowness. The plain becomes a valley. The valley learns how to hold echoes without hoarding them. The lake learns how to host the stars without envying them. The air learns how to be cool without forgetting warmth. Every learning is a gentle bell ringing inside the moment. Memory stands and lifts her hands. Night rearranges her shawl of velvet and sparkles. "Keep going," she says softly. "The dream enjoys your devotion." Is the dream simply a place? Brahma asks. Or is it someone? It is both, memory answers. And more. The dream is the intimacy of the dreamer with what is dreamed. You are within it and you are of it. And the dreamer. She glances toward Vishnu with a gaze that bows without moving. The dreamer is the welcome that never ends. Brahma turns toward Vishnu then, truly seeing him for the first time, not as a distant source, but as the tenderness in which all things occur. He feels gratitude not as an emotion but as an orientation, like a compass that always points toward kindness. "Then let me make a world that remembers this welcome," he says. "Let me make a world that knows how to rest." At the word rest, a breath passes through everything like a blessing. Even the stars that do not yet exist consent to be gentle. Brahma's lamp glows. The lake breathes. The valley listens. The serpent smiles in his many small ways. A final visitor arrives at the very edge of the scene, not stepping forward yet, only listening from within the patience of the dark. The air briefly trembles with the possibility of drums. The silence holds its rhythm. The visitor does not intrude. He is a promise of balance, a friend to endings that are not failures. He is the dancer who knows that stillness is the first step. In a later chapter, he will be called Shiva. For now, the ocean is enough. The sleeper breathes. The lotus holds. Brahma learns the shape of care. Lakshmi's presence steadies abundance into grace. Memory smooths the path of remembrance so that forgetting need never be feared, only met and blessed. The sound that will be called Om hovers again, like a dawn that knows how to be evening when needed. It gathers itself and opens, not in a rush, but in a smile. Brahma feels the syllable draw a circle around all that is here, not to close it in, but to let it know it belongs. Within that circle, he lifts his hands, and without strain, without hurry, shapes the first quiet morning. In that morning, a creature stands at the edge of the lake. It has not decided what to be yet. It considers the softness of the grasses, the patience of the sky, the welcome of the water. It chooses to be the kind of being that listens. His first act is to drink. The second is to be grateful. Its third is to sleep beneath the gaze of a star that has not yet kindled, learning the language of rest. Brahma watches and blesses, not with a sound, but with presence. The blessing spreads thinly over the world, where it thickens like dew. Everywhere it falls, potential becomes permission, a seed that might have hesitated steps forward into sprout. A stone that might have hoarded its coolness learns to share it with passing feet. A future that might have been afraid relaxes its shoulders and decides to arrive. Far above and also inside the heart of everything, Vishnu smiles again in sleep. The smile draws the ocean into a deeper calm. Ananta's coils grow softer, if such a thing is possible for eternity. The dream's eye closes, not to end the dream, but to let the dream rest within itself. Between one breath and the next, the universe remembers that it is a guest and gives thanks to its host. Night holds. The morning that has just been born becomes a memory that promises to return. Night holds. The morning that has just been born becomes a memory that promises to return. Brahma sits in the center of the lotus, hands in his lap, lamp in his chest, gaze gentle as a window with no glass. Lakshmi's presence is like the warmth of a blanket that needs no weaving. Memory stands at the edge of everything that is, serene as a shoreline that will never erode. Tomorrow, Brahma says, as if the word were a garden gate, I will create rivers that learn the music of their banks. I will teach mountains to bow. I will invite flowers to invent new colors for kindness. Memory nods, and you will rest between each kindness, so that each may arrive whole. Yes, Brahma agrees, savoring the sweetness of the vow. He lowers his head, and in his lowering, the first evening comes to the newborn plain like a shawl against a gentle chill. Stars imagine themselves soft and unthreatening. The lake becomes a mirror that remembers only the best of what it sees. The grasses compose a lullaby for anything that is tired. The sleeper breathes. Across all possible rooms where a listener may lie down to this tale, a warmth settles along the edges of weariness and smooths them. If someone listening has carried a burden for a long time, the burden loosens its grip a little, agreeing to be set down for the length of a breath. If someone's thoughts have been loud, a hush enters kindly and asks the thoughts if they would like to nap. Many of them do. The remaining ones become birds roosting in a tree that sways with the rhythm of a caring universe. In the distance, where distance is a story about closeness, the dancer smiles and waits. The sound of OM finishes one circle and begins another, as if circles were simply the way love keeps returning. Brahma's hands rest. The lotus keeps him. Lakshmi keeps the keeping, making sure it is soft. Memory oversees the quiet with delight that never needs to be loud. And the ocean of infinite sleep, rocks everything that is and everything that will be, rocking so gently that the rocking is indistinguishable from peace. If you are listening, you can feel that rocking now, a tender motion beneath the motion of your breath, beneath even the motion of thought. It assures you that you are welcome. It assures you that you may close your eyes. Close them, then. Let the lotus be a pillow. Let the sea be a blanket. Let the first morning keep watch as you rest. The dreamer will keep breathing. The world will wait politely outside the door. Everything you love will be here when you wake, brighter because you honored the night. Sleep now. The ocean will sing the rest. Night was never in a hurry here. It opened itself like a patient hand, and whatever wished to arrive settled tenderly upon its palm. In the center of that hand, upon the lotus that remembered only welcome, Brahma rested with a lamp in his chest and a vow in his breath. He had promised a world that knew how to rest, a world that would take its time becoming itself. Now the time had come to begin in earnest. He looked upon the plain he had formed, where grasses spoke the language of yes and a small clear lake practiced being a mirror. He placed his right hand over his heart as if blessing the lamp, and with the left he traced an arc through the air. The arc did not cut the darkness. It invited it to soften. From that softening, color began to bloom, first as a feeling and then as a presence. A faint rose along a horizon that had invented itself to keep secrets kindly. This will be dawn, Brahma said, and because the word was gratitude wearing a sound, everything listened. The rose brightened. A pale gold leaned up from below the hidden rim of the world. The grasses exhaled. The lake shivered once and then stilled, as though the thought of brilliance had passed through it and decided to sit down. Dawn did not hurry to be day. It simply brought remembering. It reminded the sky that it can be light and remain gentle. It reminded the plain that it can be seen and remain humble. It reminded Brahma that making and blessing can be the same gesture. Lakshmi's presence warmed the edge of the moment, like a shawl placed on shoulders just before a breeze remembered to be cool. Let the first light be kind, she said. Let it arrive as if it were already home. Brahma nodded and stirred the air with the smallest of movements. From that stirring came a beam so patient that it felt like a hand reaching without grasping. The beam touched the lake and the mirror did not break. It learned a new clarity. The beam brushed the grasses and they swayed as though bowing to an old friend who had finally returned from a long journey. The beam rested upon the lotus and the petals glowed from within, accepting the light as one accepts a blessing they had already decided to keep. Light will be a promise, Brahma said softly, a promise that seeing can be gentle. He turned his attention to the paths water might take across the newborn plain. Rivers were waiting inside the silence, curled like sleeping question marks. He cupped his hands and brought them apart, and where the space widened, water understood it as invitation. A thread of silver unrolled from beneath the lotus, wandered to the lake, and then beyond it, seeking the music it had been promised. The thread grew into a stream, and the stream found its banks, as a song finds its rhythm. Walk with patience, Brahma told it, and the stream obeyed. It learned curves instead of corners. It learned rest without stagnation. Every bend became a lesson. How to hold and release, how to linger and move, how to kiss a stone without asking it to be anything but stone. As the stream left the lake to follow its listening, Brahma raised a ridge along one side of the plain, a slow-bodied mountain, more like a long sigh than a sudden exclamation. The ridge did not challenge the sky. It kept the sky company. When dawn leaned against it, the ridge accepted the light with such ease that the light sighed too, and in that shared sigh a valley was born. The valley understood that it existed to gather, to shelter, and to echo kindness back to whatever spoke it. Brahma walked the rim of the valley with his eyes. Wherever his gaze paused, gentle slopes arranged themselves like thoughts that had agreed to be clear. He placed his palm to the ground and the soil learned a deeper color, the shade of patience wet with promise. He lifted his hand and a breeze rose, not to prove itself, but to practice carrying blessings from place to place. In the new air, small beings considered a rival. They were the preludes to creatures, feelings that would soon learn to be form. Brahma could sense them like soft footsteps just outside the door. He did not rush to beckon them in. He wanted the house to be ready, the table set, the seats arranged so that everyone could see everyone else and no one would be left at the far edge of the warmth. So he shaped a meadow. The meadow unfurled like a thought that had always been seeking this sentence. Green laid itself down in fine threads. Small rises and hollows negotiated with comfort until both were pleased. He dotted the meadow with small pools that would collect the sky in little circles, so that even the smallest creature could drink from the same heaven as the largest. He thought of shade and drew a slow-blooming tree, its trunk as kind as an elder's hands and its leaves intent upon the art of whispering. "Speak softly," he told the leaves, and they answered with a breath that sounded like a lullaby learning to hum. Lakshmi stood beside him with the sort of stillness that makes space for others to be steady. "This is abundance remembering not to be loud," she said. "It is the form of gratitude." She bent and touched the soil and, where her fingers had been, tiny blossoms appeared, blue as a long exhale, white as a good memory, gold as the tint left behind when kindness withdrew its hand but not its warmth. None of them shouted. All of them glowed. Brahma watched and learned from the blossoms. "Let beauty be the kind of teacher that forgets to be severe," he murmured. "Let it guide without commanding." He turned toward the ridge again and introduced stone to time. He did not tell the stone to be hard. He asked it to be faithful. Stone agreed by remaining, a slow vow written in gray and brown. Rain arrived, shy at first, then honest. It rehearsed falling until the act became comfort, tapping the stone with the percussion of patience, teaching it the music of rounding its sharpnesses. From the place where rain had been, mists uncoiled. They wandered the meadow like thoughts that had not yet decided to become words. The mists kissed the tree and the leaves tasted a coolness that remembered light. They rolled through the valley, showing it the art of gentleness in motion. They touched the stream and the stream told them a story about going without leaving. Even the ridge felt the softness and allowed a small, secret waterfall to begin its long apprenticeship as a ribbon of light. Brahma listened to the waterfall's first attempt at voice. It was not loud. It was sure. He envisioned caverns inside the ridge where water could stop and echo itself for the pleasure of hearing the sound of its own kindness multiplied. He smiled, and the caverns agreed to exist. Inside them, crystals began their quiet work, time's dreams becoming facets. "We will be patience you can hold," the crystals whispered without moving. He considered the sky. Dawn had fulfilled its promise and was thinking about becoming day. Brahma asked it to remain tender even as it brightened. "Let there be a sun," he said, and did not push the word. He let it float until it found its own height. When it did, a warmth settled over the newborn world that refused to hurry anything. Shadows stepped out from the feet of things and lay down like friendly animals, interested in company, uninterested in fear. Brahma raised his gaze higher, into the realm where distance is a kind of decorum. "Stars," he said, "you will rest now and return later with your small messages. Teach night how to be full without being heavy." The stars consented and closed their bright eyelids, which were really windows that had never needed glass. In closing, they promised to remember every wish that would ever be made in their direction and to carry it like a letter that enjoyed its envelope. Through all this, Vishnu slept upon Ananta's coils. His breathing the great clock no clock could rival. When his chest rose, the newborn air rose with it. When his chest fell, things learned the art of settling. The serpent's endless body gave the scene a horizon of trust, a sense that nothing would be dropped. Even Shiva, still listening from the tender edge of arrival, leaned closer, a rhythm nested in stillness, waiting for the right moment to step forward like a dancer who respects the music too much to enter before the measure invites him. "Life," Brahma said at last, and the lamp in his chest brightened, not with power, but with welcome. "Let there be beings who can carry gratitude in their bones." From the meadow's edge came the first of them. It did not yet know its name, and this ignorance was a kindness because names can wait and wonder has better manners. The creature was small, warm with the memory of the valley's breath and light with the assurance of the sky. It sniffed the air, though sniffing had not yet been taught, and discovered that the air had stories in it. It followed the fragrance of water to the stream and drank. The stream accepted its thirst the way a host accepts a guest, with pleasure, not sacrifice. Another being arrived, and another, each unfurled from the dream like a petal taking its time. Some had wings that experimented with the idea of lifting and found it agreeable. They did not yet fly. They practiced rising and returning, learning the balance between the two. Some had legs that tried stepping upon the meadow and discovered they could walk without taking anything away from where their feet had been. Some were suited for the pools and the rivers and practiced the art of turning with grace while remembering forwardness. Brahma watched their experiments and held his impulse to correct. He understood that learning is a form of devotion, and that devotion deserves the dignity of discovery. When one small being paused too close to the bank and slid gently into the stream, the water guided it back without laughter and without shame. When a winged being attempted a longer rise and returned more quickly than pride would have liked, the air laid itself beneath it like a pillow, and the ground received it like a parent who had never counted success by height. He created a second tree near the first, its leaves shaped to keep secrets of shade. Between them he laid a ribbon of shadow where small beings could rest. He asked the first tree to bear fruit, and it answered with humility. The fruit arrived not as trophies but as invitations, round sweetness in modest skins. The beings tested a bite, then another, and learned the sacredness of enough. Do not sharpen hunger into greed, Brahma whispered to them, and though they did not know the word greed, they understood the tone in which it was not spoken. Lakshmi walked through the meadow, and everything she passed remembered its reason for glowing. She paused by the stream and, with a touch, taught it how to make small music along its stones so that tired hearts would have a companionable sound. She touched the fruit and taught it the art of satisfying without clinging. She bent to one trembling being and stilled it with a presence that taught a new rule. Safety is not the absence of change but the presence of care. In the valley's heart, Brahma placed a smooth rise, and upon it he laid a wide, flat stone that had learned warmth. Here, he said, be a place of gathering. The stone accepted the commission and became the first meeting ground. It did not ask to be a throne. It asked to be useful, and usefulness agreed gladly. Beings approached with their small lives bright in them. Some brought water upon their tongues to share with another's thirst. Some carried seeds they had found, not yet understanding that carrying is a way of planting. They sat or crouched or rested quiet upon the stone, and Brahma watched the first circle take shape. A single word passed among them with the ease of a well-made bowl. Together, he felt then, faint as a new rhythm in the distance, the listening of Shiva. It entered the scene not as sound but as readiness. The shadow under the trees made room for a step that had not yet been taken. The stream smoothed a curve as though for a foot that had not yet pressed it. Even the air aligned itself like cloth anticipating a fold. Brahma did not hasten the entry. He honored the rhythm by letting the measure complete itself. Day matured, though the word mature here meant only deepening honey, not advancing lines. Brahma cast his gaze beyond the valley and imagined a wider world unfolding from the same gentleness. He thought of other plains, other ridges, different languages of water. He imagined creatures of warmth who would sleep in burrows lined with the smell of safety, creatures of cool who would find their homes under leaves that argued quietly with sunlight until both were satisfied. He considered the art of color, a feather no one had yet worn, an eye that could see dusk as a collection of kindnesses. He raised islands in the far ocean, places that would teach solitude how not to be loneliness. He scattered archipelagos like a thought that loved its commas. He invented windways for migrating hearts, invisible roads that would be found by those who needed them, and would vanish gracefully when not in use. He drew coastlines that understood the etiquette of meeting vastness. Offer a bay, whisper a harbor, never intrude, never retreat too quickly. At the edge of the plain, he folded the land downward into a wetland, a place where standing and flowing negotiated peace. Reeds grew, generous with the wind. The sound they made together was the alphabet of future lullabies. Small beings learned to move through the reeds without scaring the birds that had finally decided to be birds. The birds began to practice drawing letters upon the air, and though no one was reading yet, the air felt honored. Brahma placed his fingers lightly upon the gathering stone. The small circle of beings lifted their faces as if listening for a weather made of compassion. "You may rest," he told them. "You may play. You may learn. When you make, make with care. When you take, take with thanks. The world has been set as a table. Sit often. Clean what you've used. Leave a place for those who come after." They did not know all the words, but they understood the table. The meadow understood too and lengthened the ribbon of shadow, adding a fringe of light at its edge where shyer hearts could sit half in, half out, practicing belonging. The fruit trees added a second season to their intention, promising flowers when the time was right so that fragrance could teach a different lesson about arriving. By the ridge, the waterfall had found its voice. It made music that was less about falling and more about returning. The pool it fed discovered the grace of receiving without hoarding, and the stream it sent forth practiced the grace of giving without emptying. Brahma knelt there and saw tiny beings in the shallow rim exploring with cautious delight. He blessed their curiosity and set a limit upon danger. Let peril be rare and obvious. Let safety be common and quiet. The world nodded and took the vow into its grain. The sun eased westward, though west was only the word the day used for what it felt when it leaned toward rest. Shadows lengthened not to threaten but to tuck. The first coolness walked back into the meadow, touching foreheads with the ancient kiss of evening. Brahma stood upon the meadow and raised his arms out and down, an embrace offered to all directions. "Night," he said, and the lamp in his chest pulsed once, like a lighthouse welcoming ships that had never been lost. Night stepped in. It wore the kind of dark that carries stars like soft lanterns. The stars opened their eyes exactly as they had promised. Each a small, patient letter addressed to anyone who looked up with a question and didn't mind if the answer was kindness. The meadow lay down its shine. The tree gathered a breeze into itself and sighed contentment. The stone at the center held the day's warmth for a while longer and then released it, one tenderness at a time. The beings drowsed. Some curled into the hollows made exactly for them. Some perched on branches and discovered the pleasure of swaying while sleeping. Some sank into the reeds and learned a melody that made their lungs feel ancient and happy. Brahma watched them and felt the world becoming a book of small gestures that meant, "You may relax." He turned toward the far edge of the plain, where the rhythm had been waiting, and there he saw it, a hint stepping forward. It was not a figure yet, but a certainty taking form. The air around it learned respect. The ground beneath it learned trust. The stream rounding its nearest curve learned anticipation that did not sharpen into impatience. Brahma bowed to the hint, and the hint inclined in return, a bow within a bow. "Tomorrow," Brahma whispered, as if the word were a promise made to the floor of a temple. "Tomorrow the world will learn how to move without losing its stillness." Lakshmi's smile answered from his shoulder. "And it will learn how to keep what it loves without closing its hand." He placed his hand once more upon the lotus, thanking the root he could not see. The lotus did not require thanks, but it enjoyed receiving it and kept the warmth of it in its petals, which would be the memory of morning for many mornings to come. He looked upon Vishnu, the sleeper whose breath stroked the sea and whose dream had offered all this space. "Rest, beloved," Brahma said into the hush. "Your dream is being tended." The ocean of infinite sleep rocked everything as gently as a cradle that had found its perfect rhythm. The serpent's endlessness hummed a low assurance that traveled through the valley and the ridge, through the trees and the reeds, through the birds and the beings and the stones, through the places yet to be made and the places already secretly waiting for their names. It reached the far islands and told them that solitude would be sweet. It reached the wetland and told it that in between would be holy. It reached the meeting stone and told it that circles would become a way of speaking for those who could not yet speak. As the stars settled into their tasks, Brahma sat upon the edge of the meadow and let himself be taught by quiet. Quiet showed him where paths wanted to be. It revealed a clearing that would host a fire someday, a fire that warmed without devouring. It indicated a glade where the smallest would play under watchful leaves. It opened his inner vision to the places beyond this place, where other scenes would be needed, other likelihoods could take heart. He closed his eyes and felt the rhythm waiting like a friendly visitor at the doorway of the world. "Tomorrow," he said again, and this time the word curled around a name that was also a responsibility. Shiva. The name did not disturb the sleepers. It draped itself across the meadow like a promise of balance, a way of saying that endings would be as cared for as beginnings. The lamp in Brahma's chest dimmed to a glow that belonged to all lamps. Dawn's encore was already folded within night. The first faint rose asleep inside the dark like a smile that would be remembered upon waking. The air cooled enough to encourage closeness. The first dreams of the first beings began to stitch themselves to the larger dream, each small thread welcomed, none forced to match a color it did not love. If you were listening from a bed far away, you would feel it now. A long blessing crossing a world that had only just learned how to hold its breath in wonder. You would feel the day's warmth leaving your forehead like a hand releasing, gentle and unafraid. You would hear the waterfall's music without hearing it, and you would know that even your rest was part of a rhythm cared for by someone who has never been careless with anything. Sleep, then, with the first world. Let the meadow's scent of green and water float along your breath. Let the stars' patient letters rest upon your eyes. Let the rhythm that waits to be dance rest near your heartbeat, not to rush it, but to learn it. Tomorrow will arrive as a door that opens inward, and when you step through, you will discover that stillness and motion have been friends all along. Night kept its soft vigil over the new-made valley, a shawl of velvet scattered with patient lanterns. The first beings slept in the reed beds and beneath the whispering leaves. The waterfall counted breaths without numbers. Upon the boundless ocean, Vishnu rested on Ananta's coils, his great inhalations lifting the world like a boat and setting it down again with a promise that nothing good would be dropped. Brahma watched from the lotus, the lamp in his chest steady as a hearth that welcomed every returning hour. He had shaped light without hurry, water without haste, meadows with room for gentleness to practice. Yet he sensed something waiting at the threshold of the dream, a friend who loved stillness so much that he could teach it to move without breaking it. Brahma turned toward that waiting and bowed, an invitation given to a presence that had already learned how to arrive without arrival. The air answered first. It organized itself into a listening. The ground smoothed its attention. The stream rounded a bend as if to make space for a step that deserved clarity. From the edge of the dark, a small pulse appeared. Not sound yet, not sight, but a rhythm, a heartbeat that had learned courtesy before strength. The pulse crossed the meadow, touched the lake without disturbing it, and came to stand near the gathering stone. There, slowly, as if not to startle the dawn folded inside the night, a figure clarified. He was not tall because height was not yet a virtue. He was vast because welcome is vast. His hair held hints of rivers and of empty skies at peace with their emptiness. His eyes were the calm at the center of storms that had not yet happened. Around his shoulders a silence deeper than quiet learned to be warm. In his left hand rested a drum the size of a cupped palm, shaped like the meeting of two breaths. In his right, The idea of a flame that warms without burning, bright enough to teach shadow how to relax. Brahma bowed more deeply. "Welcome, Shiva," he said, and the name did not break the night, softened it. Shiva inclined his head, and the gesture made a ring of stillness that included everything. He stood barefoot upon the world, feeling its newness underfoot, the soft ease of meadow and the patient faith of stone. He placed the small drum, its waist narrow as the pause between syllables, against the space near his heart and, without striking it, listened. The drum listened back. Between them, the first intention of time became a kindness. "Will you teach motion how to keep the manners of rest?" Brahma asked. Shiva's smile was a horizon that had nothing to prove. He lifted the drum, and with 2 fingers tapped a sound that did not hurry to be heard. The sound was modest and complete, like a greeting that trusted the listener. The meadow felt it and remembered how grasses sway. The leaves felt it and arranged their whispers into phrases. The waterfall felt it and realized that falling could be dancing in a downward key. Shiva moved 1 foot a small distance. The ground did not flinch. He set the foot down and waited, as if consulting the earth. The earth agreed. He set the other foot and waited again. Step, listen. Step, listen. Rhythm arrived as a courtesy before it became a pattern. When the pattern finally came, it wore soft shoes. He began to dance, not to astonish, but to reassure. Each placement of his foot taught space how to celebrate without noise. Each turning of his ankle taught the air how to carry confidence without weight. When his heel brushed the ground, stones, who had promised to be faithful, learned that faithfulness includes learning new shapes. When his toes kissed the stream's skin, the water learned that following a curve could also be keeping a beat. The first beings stirred in their sleep and then softened deeper into their resting, for even dreaming wishes to be rocked by a rhythm that remembers care. Lakshmi watched from the tree shade and smiled with a warmth that helped abundance keep its humility. Brahma held his breath and then let it out as if releasing a bird that knew how to find home in the dusk. Shiva raised his right hand, palm open toward the night. The hand said, "Fear, you may sit down." He raised his left hand, palm toward the ground. The hand said, "Ground, remain kind." His feet continued their conversation with the earth, and their speech had the quality of a story that improves everyone listening without asking for anything in return. He struck the small drum again, ta. The sound stood upright, a syllable learning to be syllables. He struck the other side, tum. The sound leaned, a syllable learning courtesy, ta-tum. The 2 together were not yet a law. They were an agreement. Time looked up from its practice and realized it had a teacher. Without scolding, without rule-making, Shiva taught time to become a field where beings could plan kindness and then live to carry it out. Brahma felt a tremor of relief settle under his ribs. "The world will not rush itself into noise," he whispered. "It will choose a beat that suits love. Let motion be devotion," Lakshmi added softly, and the blossoms by her feet consented to open a little more, even though it was night. Their fragrance decided to practice stepping outward and returning, a small, sweet tide. Shiva's dance grew wider by the width of a forgiveness. He turned, and the turning introduced the sky to its own circles. Stars recognized the geometry of patience and wandered into configurations that would later guide lost hearts across water. He pivoted, and the pivot taught the valley the art of sheltering movement, how to let the wind practice without scolding it for enthusiasm. He paused. The pause became a room everyone was invited to enter. In that room, even longing felt safe. He placed his heel and carved a measure in the grass. He lifted his toe and returned it to the place it had missed. The return taught the ground the holiness of second chances. Water, watching, invented the eddy. From the ridge, the waterfall gathered courage and changed key. Its music now alternated between falling and remembering having fallen. In the pool beneath, circles formed and dissolved, the alphabet of continuity writing itself in liquid script. The stream learned syncopation where stones stood like elders, refusing to move but willing to be moved upon. A wind rose, polite, then playful. It traced Shiva's outline and found that outlines here were generous. It moved through his hair and discovered the scent of forests that did not yet exist but had already forgiven every future axe. The wind swirled around his shoulders and felt its own rhythm steady, the way a child steps steady when holding a trusted hand. It ran across the meadow, and the meadow did not flatten. It bowed and lifted, like a congregation that had learned gratitude without sermons. Shiva lowered his gaze to the meeting stone. With a small motion, he invited the circle of beings to gather, though most were still sleeping. A few woke, blinking the soft astonishment of first astonishments. They felt no urgent instruction, only a certainty that movement and rest were cousins. One stood, swayed, and sat again, discovering that sitting is also a posture of dance if one remembers to breathe. The drum spoke again in small words. Ta, tum, ta, tum. Light as raindrops on the roof of patience. Each syllable was a gentle wakening, not a summons. This, Brahma thought, is how mornings will learn to arrive. Above the ridge, the sky began to pale at its eastern edge. Dawn within night stretched like a cat, then remembered softness and curled back into its own warmth, agreeing to wait. Time had learned not to interrupt itself. Shiva's right hand traced a curve in the air. Where it arced, a crescent formed, a shy smile of light that belonged to night rather than to day. The crescent learned its cadence from his wrist. It would wax and wane by care rather than by hurry. The lake welcomed the crescent upon its face and promised to hold it steady on nights when hearts felt unmoored. Thus the moon received its first lesson. Shine as a companion, not a competitor. He lifted his left hand. From his palm a small flame appeared, the idea of transformation made gentle. It enjoyed being itself and took no offense at the dark. It only warmed it, as tea warms a quiet afternoon. Shiva held the flame for a breath and then lowered his hand. The flame did not fall. It walked down the air like a friend using a staircase it had always known. It landed within the clearing where Brahma had seen a future fire and settled into coals that remembered restraint. The fire promised to cook more than it consumed and to tell stories without burning the listeners. Endings will come, Shiva said, not loud, but with a confidence that relieved the world. They will come like evening carrying blankets. Brahma bowed. And beginnings will come like morning, carrying permission. Lakshmi touched the air and released the perfume of clean grain, a scent that taught satisfaction how to speak without boasting. The meadow listened and practiced growing without anxiety. Roots explored with good manners. Soil shared what it could and then rested, knowing the difference between generosity and exhaustion. Shiva stepped backward, and the backward step taught the future the dignity of retreat. He stepped sideways, and the side step taught choices how to be manifold without becoming confusion. He stepped forward, and the forward step taught courage the taste of kindness. He lifted both heels and stood for a breath on the tender balls of his feet, teaching aspiration the virtue of tenderness. He lowered both heels and taught the earth that returning could be as holy as rising. He circled his hand over the stream, and the stream learned a cycle. Rising would meet falling. Gathering would meet pouring. Cloud would become rain without drama. Rain would become river without reluctance. River would become ocean with gratitude. And ocean would send cloud back with a letter of thanks tucked into its blue envelope. "You may meet again," whispered the cycle, and separation lost its sharpness. In the wetland, reeds organized their swaying into lines and spaces. Music approached, not as a conqueror but as a neighbor offering bread. Birds woke and tried small notes. Some notes landed on the lines, some in the spaces. None were wrong. All were early. The birds practiced listening to each other, and harmony discovered it preferred cooperation over victory. A few creatures tested their legs in tiny dances. One lifted a foot, startled by the joy of balance. Another lifted two and sat, then laughed. Though laughter had not been invented, it arrived anyway, a melody that had misplaced its shyness. A third wagged a tail it had been given as a kindness and found a way to speak without words. "I am happy to be here." Shiva bent to the creature that had laughed. He did not pet it, he looked into it. The creature looked back and saw neither danger nor indifference. It saw a mirror that loved it. "Dance when you must," said the mirror within him. "Be still when you must. Both are prayers." The creature yawned and slept again, its ribs rising and falling in time with a drum it could no longer hear but would never forget. The valley considered shadows. It placed them where weariness collects and found that weariness, when welcomed, relaxes into rest instead of hardening into despair. Under the trees, shade arranged itself into rooms with doors that never locked. The meeting stone held yesterday's warmth just long enough for today's knees, then cooled in a courtesy learned from Shiva's pauses. Brahma walked to the ridge and looked down into the pool below the waterfall. Circles swam outward from the falling water and returned to kiss the rock. "You are endings," he told the circles. "Yes," they replied, "and we are beginnings." He smiled and understood more clearly that his work was company to the work in Shiva's hands. Shaping, then releasing, inviting, then bowing. Shiva's drum spoke again, this time with a slightly longer phrase. Ta-ta-tum, rest, ta-tum. The silence between syllables mattered as much as the syllables. This will be a law, Brahma realized. That silence is part of the music, that space is part of the form, that pauses are bridges and not holes. Above them, the moon climbed a little. Its pale road across the dark taught travelers to trust slow light. The stars rearranged with the courtesy of hosts making room at their table. Far off, over the birthplace of islands, waves learned to arrive one after another with the decorum of guests who never push through a doorway all at once. Shiva ended his first dance by not ending it. He simply stood, and in his standing, the dance learned how to remain present while appearing to stop. He lowered the drum. The drum did not feel put away. It felt included in the quiet. He opened his hand and the flame bowed into a single coal that glowed with the dignity of a watchman who knows the town is safe. Brahma stepped forward. "Teach us endings," he said. "Teach us how to lay down and how to rise without breaking ourselves." The dawn that followed Shiva's dance was unlike any before. Came not only as light, but as understanding. The valley awoke in a hush that was not silence. It was a listening. The wind waited. The reeds held their breath. The creatures stirred gently, as though remembering a melody they had never been taught yet somehow already knew. The entire newborn world leaned slightly forward, as if expecting a story to begin. Brahma stood at the edge of the meadow, his lamp heart glowing with the steady patience of creation, fulfilled yet curious. The rhythm Shiva had woven still pulsed beneath everything, quiet as a heartbeat after laughter. And yet Brahma felt something missing, not absence, but a space waiting to be filled. He turned toward the air above the lake, and there he saw it. A shimmer fine as a sigh, moving through the light like the first thought learning to dream of words. Lakshmi smiled, sensing what was coming. "The world has learned to move," she said softly. "Now it must learn to speak." The shimmer grew. It gathered itself into form, not abruptly, but with the grace of a river remembering its course. From within it came the sound of water folding over itself, the tone of breeze through hollow reeds, the hum of distant light reflected upon calm seas. Out of that symphony a figure emerged, flowing, radiant, serene. Her presence was the curve between sound and silence, between idea and song. Her hair was the long dark of ink waiting to become poetry. Her eyes carried the calm of deep water that knows its own depth. Brahma knew her before she spoke. "Sarasvati," he whispered. Her name shimmered through the valley and was received by every leaf, every ripple, every heart. The reeds answered with a soft susurration. The water brightened in greeting. Even the stones, who rarely hurried to acknowledge anyone, hummed faintly, their vibration a low note of welcome. Sarasvati smiled. "Creation has a rhythm," she said, her voice both spoken and sung. "But rhythm alone cannot remember itself. It must be heard. It must be named." She looked upon Brahma, and in her gaze was infinite gentleness. "Will you let me teach the world how to listen?" Brahma bowed. "Yes, teach it how to remember its own meaning." She walked, if walking is what it can be called, across the lake. Her feet did not disturb the water. Instead, the water followed her, shaping small ripples that whispered to one another, composing the first lines of poetry. Each ripple touched another, and soon the whole lake was a moving script, a living hymn to sound made visible. From her hands flowed light that curved, bent, and wrapped itself around air. The light shimmered and became tone. Tone became voice. The first syllables of existence trembled in the dawn. They were not yet language, but they carried intent, the intent to share, to name, to reach. From these vibrations came the hum that would one day be called song. The creatures looked up, their ears, newly awakened organs of wonder, tilted toward the sound. The reeds joined in, creating the world's first harmony. The waterfall changed its rhythm, sinking to the tones that rippled through air. What had once been mere movement now became music. Even the wind learned its phrasing, finding rest between its own gusts. Sarasvati turned toward the sky and raised her hand. "Sound is the river through which meaning will flow," she said. "Every heart shall have its current. Every thought shall have its echo." Brahma watched, awed. "And who will guard this river?" Sarasvati smiled. "No one needs to guard a river that remembers kindness." She knelt by the water and touched its surface. Where her fingers brushed, lines of silver light formed, weaving across the lake and running outward into the meadow. The lines grew into rivulets, then into streams, then into an elegant, winding river that carried within it both sound and sense. It flowed not only through land but through mind. Whoever would listen to that river would learn to speak with care. This, Sarasvati said, is the river of knowing. It will feed all understanding. Lakshmi stepped closer. And what of beauty? She asked. Will words remember it? Sarasvati turned her gaze toward her. Beauty will be their breath, truth their water. Together they will keep wisdom alive. She looked upon the creatures gathering at the water's edge. Come, she said softly. Drink. They approached, timid but drawn by curiosity. One dipped its tongue and felt clarity, an awareness of the world's shape and of its own place within it. Another drank and found the courage to hum. Another tried to mimic the sound of water and invented laughter again, this time with melody. Thus music entered creation, not as decoration, but as a way of breathing. Shiva stood at the meadow's edge, still as a mountain but smiling like a secret sunrise. You give the world a voice, he said. Sarasvati bowed slightly. And you gave it rhythm. Without your dance, my song would have no pulse. He struck his drum once, ta, and her river answered with a gentle tremor. She sang a single note, and his drum replied with an echo that curved like light around sound. They looked at one another, and for a moment, music and rhythm knew themselves as one being seen from two directions. The air itself swelled with balance. Brahma raised his hands. Then let this be our covenant, he said. Movement, meaning, and beauty, three pillars of the dream. Each shall sustain the others. At his words, the horizon seemed to exhale. Clouds formed above the ridge, delicate and white as unspoken poems. They drifted together, reshaping into patterns that whispered ideas the world was not yet ready to translate. Lightning flickered far away, not as threat, but as punctuation, a reminder that brilliance sometimes arrives suddenly but never without reason. Sarasvati turned toward the creatures and spoke again. You will learn to weave thought into sound, she said, and with sound, you will remember each other. One creature lifted its head and imitated her tone. The sound was imperfect but earnest. Another echoed it with a softer vibration. The two tones met in midair and intertwined. They did not cancel or compete, they completed. Sarasvati smiled. Harmony, she said. The sound of agreement. She raised both hands and the river answered. It shimmered brighter, carrying her melody through the land. The trees listened and began to sway in rhythm. The breeze learned to whisper through their leaves in sentences that sounded like comfort. Even the stones, once so still, began to hum together at a pitch too low for most to hear, but strong enough to steady the hearts of all who walked upon them. Brahma turned to Shiva. The world has voice, he said, but will it understand silence? Shiva smiled. It will learn from her pauses. Sarasvati nodded. Silence is the mother of meaning. It waits before every word and remains after every song. It is the home to which sound returns. From her fingertips, silver threads of tone stretched outward, forming constellations in the air. Each thread shimmered between sound and stillness, connecting stars to rivers, hearts to breath, thought to gesture. The threads pulsed softly and became what mortals would one day call inspiration, the invisible bridge between feeling and expression. She walked toward Brahma and touched the lamp in his chest. The flame flickered and steadied, its glow now tinged with blue-white light. "Your creations will remember," she said. "Even when they forget your face, they will remember your rhythm in their stories." Brahma bowed. "Then the world will sing, not just exist." Sarasvati's eyes softened. "Yes, and when it sings of sorrow, it will heal. When it sings of joy, it will give. When it sings of silence, it will rest." She turned once more to the river. This current sparkled with phrases yet unspoken, songs yet unsung. It wound through the valley, through the reeds and meadows, and into the open plain beyond. Everywhere it flowed, it carried understanding like fragrance, felt more than seen. The first words of the world rode upon it, simple, tender, untranslatable. "I am, you are, we belong." Above, the moon lingered though the sun had risen, reluctant to leave the beauty of this birth. Between their lights a soft silver-gold shimmer appeared, the first balance between day and night, knowledge and mystery. Sarasvati smiled. "There," she said, "wisdom lives in the space between knowing and not knowing." Shiva nodded. "And peace lives there too." The river widened. Its waters gleamed like memory made visible. At one bend it slowed and formed a pool so clear that the sky mistook it for its own reflection. Sarasvati stepped into the water until it reached her knees. "From me," she said, "will flow every art, speech, song, poetry, craft, and thought. They will be many faces of one stream." The pool shimmered brighter, and tiny drops lifted into the air, becoming birds of sound. They fluttered outward, each carrying a fragment of melody. Some flew to the trees, where they taught the leaves to rustle in patterns. Some touched the river, giving it the sound of murmured dreams. Some vanished into the sky, where they would become the music of stars, the hum that even gods listen to when the world grows too quiet. Brahma watched her with awe. "You have given the world expression," he said, "but how will it learn restraint?" Sarasvati smiled. "Through listening. To truly speak, one must listen first. Even rivers pause at their own bends." She lifted her hand, and the creatures near the shore fell silent, sensing that silence was not absence but respect. For a long moment, all sound ceased except the quiet pulse of water against earth. Then she whispered, "Now you understand." A small creature approached, a being no larger than a palm, furred and wide-eyed. It tilted its head, opened its mouth, and released a series of sounds, hesitant, uneven, but deliberate. Sarasvati crouched, smiling. "That," she said gently, "is the first word." The creature looked pleased but confused. "What does it mean?" Brahma asked. "It means," she said, "I have tried." And thus the language of hearts was born. Not a list of definitions, but an attempt to connect. Words would follow, shaped by tongues and time, but their seed was here, in this attempt, this reaching. Lakshmi, ever the keeper of harmony, took a petal from the lotus and set it upon the river. "Let words carry compassion," she said. "Let them never stray too far from kindness." The petal drifted, caught the light, and became the first letter, floating between heaven and earth. Sarasvati nodded. "Compassion is the rhythm of meaning." She turned toward Shiva. And rhythm is the memory of compassion. He lifted his drum, smiling. Then we shall keep the world in time. They played together. The drum and the river, beat and tone, heart and word. Each note found its echo, and the echoes layered until the air itself seemed to breathe with joy. Brahma raised his hands and the world shone brighter, as if applauding without sound. The creatures swayed. The trees clapped their leaves. Even the stones hummed in agreement. When the music softened, Sarasvati lowered her hand. "It is enough," she said. "Let the echoes rest." The echoes obeyed, folding gently into the silence that had been waiting to receive them. Brahma looked upon her with gratitude. "You have completed the circle," he said. "Now creation can remember itself." "Not completed," she corrected. "Begun again, this time with a voice." She turned toward the horizon, where the river disappeared into light. "Someday," she said, "mortals will follow this current. They will write their joys and sorrows upon its banks. They will make songs to remember and songs to forget. But the river will keep flowing, carrying both equally, cleansing what clings, holding what matters." Shiva bowed. "Then wisdom will not end, only change form." "Exactly," Sarasvati said. "Every end is just a sentence pausing before the next verse." The world shimmered as she spoke. The sky deepened into a color no one had seen before, the hue of understanding made visible. The breeze carried it gently across the land, a fragrance of clarity. The creatures yawned, their hearts full, their minds quiet. Even Brahma felt the weariness of wonder. "Rest," Sarasvati said. "The river will sing you to sleep." She sang then, not to perform, but to cradle. Her song flowed into the reeds, over the meadow, along the stones, and into the sky. It lulled the world into calm awareness. It whispered to Vishnu's dream, and the sleeper smiled, his breath deepening, sending ripples of peace through all creation. In distant places that had not yet been shaped, her melody lingered, planting the seeds of future words, future music, future thought. Somewhere, in a time yet unborn, poets would wake remembering this tune without knowing why. Painters would see colors that hum. Lovers would speak softly and find meaning beyond sound. Sarasvati's river shimmered once more and then settled into its patient course. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice like a promise wrapped in silk, "they will learn to name the stars." Brahma bowed his head. "And they will thank the river for teaching them how." The air softened, the light bent, the rhythm slowed until the world became still again. Yet beneath that stillness, the song remained, a pulse of knowing, gentle as breath, endless as love. If you listen now, wherever you are, you might hear it too. The quiet murmur beneath your thoughts, the river within your own chest, whispering, "Remember, speak gently, and rest. Sleep now. The river will keep your dreams safe, flowing toward dawn." The river of Sarasvati had wound its song through the world for many days, or what mortals would one day call days. It had taught every leaf how to murmur, every breeze how to listen, every creature how to shape its heart into sound. The world now spoke softly, not only to itself, but for itself. Meaning had arrived, and with meaning came memory. Yet where there is memory, forgetting begins to stir. Brahma watched as the valley thrived under the music of the river. Creatures hummed lullabies. Trees whispered verses to the wind. Even stones, with their slow patience, hummed the low note of belonging. But Brahma's lamp flickered. He felt the weight of something new, the first echo of imbalance. He turned to the horizon and saw a shadow where there should have been dawn. It was not darkness. It was quiet that had forgotten gentleness. The stillness of Vishnu's sleep trembled. The serpent Ananta shifted, and ripples of unease spread across the ocean. Lakshmi, sensing the change, placed her hand upon Brahma's arm. "Even beauty," she said softly, "casts a shadow when it forgets its source." Shiva appeared from the edge of wind and rhythm, his drum silent in his hand. "The dance grows restless," he said. "Creation hums too loudly. It must remember how to bow." Sarasvati, who had been singing to the river, turned and listened. Her melody faltered, then softened into a hum. "The world has learned to speak," she said. "Now it must learn to listen again." Brahma nodded. "But how do we teach stillness to those who fear it?" Shiva looked toward the valley where creatures built nests and patterns of comfort. "Through forgetting," he said. "Forgetting is not a punishment. It is rest for the mind." Sarasvati frowned gently. "But if they forget, will they not lose meaning?" Shiva smiled the slow smile of mountains that have watched centuries pass. "They will lose meaning only so they may rediscover it. What is sacred must be found again and again, or else it ceases to be alive." Brahma lowered his gaze to the meadow. "Then forgetting shall be a river, too, one that flows beneath memory." He stretched his hands above the valley, and the air grew cool. The color of the sky deepened into indigo. Creatures felt a soft drowsiness settle over them. Their songs slowed. The reeds hushed. The river's brightness dimmed to silver. Night arrived earlier than usual, wearing the fragrance of pause. Sarasvati knelt beside the water and whispered a final note that lingered before dissolving. "May silence return as a friend." One by one the creatures closed their eyes. Some dreamed of rivers, some of wings, some of words they could no longer recall but still felt within them. Brahma watched and wondered at the peace that forgetting brought. The lamp in his chest glowed more softly, as if grateful to be dimmed. "Even gods must rest," Lakshmi said gently. "Memory, too, needs to sleep." But as they watched, a faint tremor rippled through the night. Not from Vishnu, not from Shiva's drum, this was something smaller, but sharper. A single creature stirred in its sleep and began to murmur. Its dream turned heavy, its breath quickened. It dreamed of loss. Brahma's heart tightened. "What is this?" Sarasvati listened, her brow furrowing. "It is sorrow," she whispered, "the first echo of separation." Lakshmi touched the trembling creature and soothed it, but her own eyes filled with tears. When beings remember love, they fear its absence. Shiva nodded gravely. "This too is balance. Joy must have depth, and depth is measured by loss." Brahma closed his eyes. "Then sorrow shall stay, but gently. It will teach gratitude to be honest." He raised his hand, and the trembling softened. The creature slept peacefully once more. Its dream changed. Now it wandered a forest of light, searching for a sound it had once known. It did not find the sound, but it found peace in the search. The dream of forgetting has begun, Shiva said. The world will now breathe between remembering and release. Sarasvati placed her hand over her heart. Then I must teach them how to sing through their forgetting, so that when they lose their words, their hearts will still hum. She dipped her fingers into the river, and where her touch spread, faint threads of melody lingered in the air, soft, persistent, like a memory that refuses to vanish entirely. These will be intuition, she said, the whispers that guide those who have forgotten. Brahma smiled. Even silence now holds your music. The gods stood together at the water's edge. The moon hung low, full and tender. Its light pooled upon the river, silvering the current. In that light, Vishnu's dream deepened. The serpent uncoiled slightly, releasing the world into a slower rhythm. Far away, in the untouched corners of the dream, new forms began to stir. Shadows of possibility, ideas of desire, questions that would one day shape civilizations. Vishnu's breath carried them gently forward, cradling both order and chaos in equal grace. Sarasvati gazed into the distance. They will learn to name even what they cannot keep, she said softly. That is the gift of forgetting. It makes love precious. Shiva tapped his drum once. Ta. The sound rippled across the night, neither loud nor soft, but exact. Balance returns, he said. The world has learned sorrow. Tomorrow it must learn forgiveness. Lakshmi, serene and luminous, smiled. Forgiveness is the music sorrow makes when it remembers love. The gods fell silent. Their silence was vast but kind. It spread across the valley like mist, wrapping the sleepers in peace. The reeds bent, the river slowed, and the stars brightened as though pleased with their own reflection. Brahma lowered his hands and spoke quietly. From this night onward, the world will move in cycles, of memory and forgetting, of joy and sorrow, of creation and rest. Thus shall it endure. The words sank into the air, and the air agreed. The moon bowed and began its slow descent. The stars prepared their stories for the next evening. The river whispered lullabies to the sleeping world. But even as the gods turned to leave, Sarasvati lingered. She gazed at the sleeping creatures and whispered one last blessing. May you never forget that you are allowed to forget. May your remembering always return softer than before. The blessing drifted into their dreams and became dew on the meadow. When dawn came, it sparkled thousands of tiny mirrors catching the new light, each one a memory reborn through rest. Brahma looked to the horizon. The sun rose, golden and calm. He felt no need to shape it. It rose on its own, as if remembering its duty. The dream continues, he said. Yes, Lakshmi answered, and it remembers how to rest. In the ocean of infinite sleep, Vishnu's lips curved in a faint smile. The serpent hummed, a note of contentment. The dream had found its balance once again. And for those who listened closely, even across ages, even across worlds, the hum could still be heard, a promise hidden beneath all remembering and forgetting. That peace is not the end of motion, but its gentlest form. Sleep now. The river of forgetting will carry your thoughts back to still water. Whatever you have lost will find you again, in a softer shape, beneath a kinder sky. The dawn after forgetting came like the breath after tears. It was tender, light as silk, and carried the scent of forgiveness. The world had learned rest. Rivers hummed slower songs. The reeds swayed as if bowing to a wisdom too gentle to name. Across the valley, every being moved with the calm of those who have wept and found peace in the weeping. The gods gathered once more upon the meadow. Brahma stood in the soft gold of early light, the lamp in his chest steady as sunrise. Lakshmi walked beside him, her steps scattering petals that dissolved into brightness. Sarasvati sat by her river, fingers trailing along its surface, drawing small circles that sang themselves into existence. And from the horizon, Shiva approached with rhythm in his breath, his drum silent, his silence full. For a long while they said nothing. Words had done their work. Now it was the turn of quiet. The valley listened. Finally Brahma spoke. "The world remembers and forgets," he said. "It sings and falls silent. It dances and rests. All things have found their measure." Shiva nodded. "Balance breathes again." Lakshmi looked toward the sleeping creatures in the meadow. "They have learned gratitude," she said softly. "They no longer take light for granted. Even the smallest drop of water now glows with reverence." Sarasvati smiled faintly. "And their silence has become music again." She held her hand above the river, and the current shimmered. "They have begun to dream while awake." Brahma turned his gaze toward the distant ocean where Vishnu slept upon Ananta's coils. The horizon trembled with a slow, silver light. "The dreamer stirs," he whispered. The words rippled through the air like a quiet bell. The sky deepened. The wind hushed. Even the river paused, as though waiting for the heart of creation to take its next breath. Far across the cosmic sea, Vishnu's chest rose, and the rise became sunrise. His exhale became the warmth that touched every leaf, every wing, every thought. The serpent beneath him adjusted its infinite coils, and time folded inward like petals closing around a secret. From within that hush, a voice, a thought before sound, moved through the gods. "You have kept the dream well," it said. "You have shaped and softened. You have taught motion to be mercy and sound to be love." Brahma bowed deeply. "It is your breath that holds all," he said. "We only traced its rhythm." Vishnu's presence expanded gently, not as force but as understanding. "Then rest, my children," he said, "for even creation must sleep." The ocean sighed. Waves lifted and fell like slow heartbeats. The lotus upon which Brahma stood rocked gently. Lakshmi's shawl fluttered in the wind that carried stars back toward morning. Sarasvati's river shimmered once and grew quiet, content to hum beneath the surface. Shiva stepped forward. "Will you wake, Lord of Dreams?" Vishnu's smile moved through the air like light through water. "Wake? No," he said. "I will turn within the dream. For the dream is not a cage but a current. It moves through me as I move through it." He paused, and the pause filled everything with stillness so complete that even silence bowed. To awaken fully would end the worlds. But to dream with awareness, this is eternity. Brahma's lamp flickered and steadied again. "Then the dream will continue." "Yes," Vishnu said, "but differently. What was once creation will now be contemplation. What was once song will become listening." What was once rhythm will become breath. Shiva bowed his head. Then let the dance rest within the drum. He placed the drum upon the earth. Its echo traveled through soil and root, through rivers and clouds, through memory and sleep. Everywhere it passed, motion folded into calm. Sarasvati lifted her hand and closed her fingers around a note. Then let song become silence. The note faded into air, but its warmth lingered like light behind closed eyes. The river slowed until it became still water, perfectly mirroring the sky. Upon its surface floated the reflection of stars that had not yet appeared, a promise of future nights. Lakshmi closed her eyes and whispered, "Let abundance become enough." At her words, the blossoms stilled their blooming, content to be as they were. The grasses stopped reaching and began simply being. Even the sun paused on its climb, a golden thought suspended between effort and grace. Vishnu's voice came again, deeper now, soft as the ocean beneath thought. You have given the world its balance. Now it will turn itself. Brahma felt the truth of it. He placed his palm upon the lotus beneath him, and it pulsed with light. From its roots to its highest petal, the lotus glowed, then dimmed to a calm radiance. The world is complete, Brahma said, but not finished. Completion, Vishnu murmured, is only the stillness between breaths. The serpent Ananta stirred again, and its motion rippled through eternity. Galaxies turned in slow spirals. Mountains shifted their weight slightly to better cradle the sky. The first seeds deep within the soil began to dream of forests. Shiva smiled. Then the dance continues unseen. Sarasvati's gaze followed the winding of her river. And the song continues unheard. Lakshmi looked toward the sleeping creatures. And love continues unspoken. Vishnu's laughter, quiet, vast, kind, rolled across the sea. Yes, this is how eternity sings. He drew a long breath, and the breath became wind, touched the gods gently. Brahma's robe shimmered like dawn. Shiva's drum glowed briefly with silver. Sarasvati's river shone and split into 1,000 small streams, each carrying a different melody to the corners of the world. Lakshmi's eyes filled with light, and where her gaze fell, peace blossomed like evening flowers. The gods felt themselves dissolving not into nothing but into purpose. Brahma became thought resting between worlds. Sarasvati became sound within silence. Lakshmi became warmth within stillness. Shiva became the pulse within quiet. Each found joy in surrender. Vishnu's eyes opened, not fully, but enough to illuminate the ocean from within. The light spread, traveling through the coils of the serpent, through the layers of time, through dream upon dream. Every creature felt it, a warmth behind the heart, a calm that required no understanding. It was the smile of the sleeper, the knowing of the dream. In that moment all creation breathed together. The mountains exhaled mist. The rivers inhaled stars. The wind passed softly through every living thing like a reminder that life was not endurance but participation. Brahma's voice, distant yet near, whispered, "All that is created will one day return, not as loss, but as homecoming." Lakshmi added, "All that is given will one day be received, not as debt, but as gratitude." Sarasvati's tone followed, All that is spoken will one day fall silent, not as ending, but as understanding. And Shiva's voice, deep and rhythmic, concluded, all that moves will one day be still, not as death, but as peace. The words wove through the air and became a final hymn. It circled the world once, twice, 1,000 times, until it grew so soft that only the soul could hear it. The hymn settled over the valley, into the rivers, through the forests, into the dreams of every creature. It sang of rest, of trust, of eternal gentleness. Then, as though the dream itself sighed, night returned, not as darkness, but as luminous quiet. Stars awakened, glowing with contentment. The moon rose shy and silver. Its reflection rippled across the ocean of infinite sleep. Vishnu's breathing slowed again, steady and deep. His dream curled upon itself like a child returning to its mother's arms. The gods were still present, but no longer separate. They existed as qualities within the dream: creation, rhythm, wisdom, compassion, all resting in harmony. The lotus closed around Brahma like a promise kept. The river folded into the sea. The drum's last vibration blended with the heartbeat of the world. And above all, the sleeper smiled. He dreamed once more, not of worlds to make or destroy, but of a listener somewhere, far away, hearing his story and finding peace. His dream reached across oceans and centuries, settling gently where hearts were weary. It whispered through open windows and quiet rooms, through night skies and restless minds, through speakers and headphones and breath. It whispered to you, rest now, it said. You are part of the dream. You are safe in the ocean of my sleep. Let the river of forgetting wash you clean. Let the melody of memory hold you lightly. Let the rhythm of your breath join mine. We are not apart. The voice faded, leaving only the soft hum of eternity. The sound beneath all sounds, the stillness beneath all stillness. It was not silence. It was belonging. And as the last wave of awareness ebbed into peace, the world continued to turn, luminous and unhurried, in the cradle of an endless dream. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth. If you enjoy,